Zach Barth, Officer Crystal Greiner, and Officer David Bailey. As Gabby Giffords noted yesterday, recovery from an attack like this requires great courage. And we know that each of these individuals I've named have courage in great supply. Capitol Police and Secret Service and the individual police officers who stand at our town meetings, our community gatherings, they are always ready and willing to give their lives, not to protect an individual, but to protect our unique, extraordinary American system those individuals serve. We will strive to be worthy of these brave men and women and the ideal that they protect. And we're going to stand united against act of violence, any act of violence that seeks to tear our system down. Now to the topic of opioids. We want to start by noting that the opioid epidemic has hit communities from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine like a wrecking ball. On the front lines of that fight is Medicaid, the largest single payer for substance abuse treatment services in our country. The House-passed bill would end the only lifeline for many who are trying to put their lives back together, and it does it by cutting $834 billion out of the Medicaid program. Now we are hearing that instead of correcting this devastating blow to working families, seniors, and others who rely on Medicaid for basic health needs, Senate Republicans may create a separate pool of money to pay for opioid addiction treatment. I will tell you, the idea of creating an opioid silo isn't going to work. And don't take it from me. Treatment experts, like those from the National Council on Behavioral Health and from the AIDS Institute, have been sending a clear message. This idea of creating this kind of silo is going to fall short for the people who need it most. And that's because the services to really meet the needs of these individuals, as Senator Markey and Senator Hassan know, it's critically that they be integrated, and particularly for younger and older people. This is so important. So the approach doesn't do right by those who need help, and it's about political expediency to get 51 votes here in the Senate. We believe treating a substance abuse disorder ought to be the same as treating other diseases. The country doesn't pay for heart surgery through a grant program. The country doesn't pay for chemotherapy through congressional appropriations. When you're sick and you have health coverage, you can get what you need. Second, you don't fight a public health crisis with grant funding alone. You don't pay for life-saving treatments and long-term addiction recovery exclusively through grants. In effect, cutting off Medicaid this way is like tying one hand behind your back at a time when you need all the hands on deck. And trying to make up hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts to Medicaid with a bit of funding outside of integrated health programs is like putting a Band-Aid on a mortal wound. It doesn't work. It's dangerous to think it will. And that is the consensus view that we're picking up from independent experts. It's also important to keep in mind that someone dealing with opioid addiction often needs treatment for other health conditions. It can be diabetes, a mental health issue, a whole host of other matters that an opioid treatment program isn't going to help with. So we need a full array of coordinated services to really meet the needs of patients, and an opioid silo is not going to get you there. One last point about flexibility. Under a proposal that is now apparently being widely discussed, the federal government would have the power to tell states what kind of treatment facilities or medication-assisted treatments grant funding could go towards. Instead of letting states pay for the care they know works best for their states. That doesn't sound to me like the kind of flexibility Republicans have used to justify their massive cuts to Medicaid. When the Affordable Care Act expanded Medicaid, hundreds of thousands of Americans suffering from opioid addiction finally could get an affordable source of care to recover from substance abuse. The Republican plan repeals the Affordable Care Act, undoes the progress, and it's our view that it will effectively end a chance at recovery for millions of Americans who are suffering from substance abuse disorders. We are going to be working together to stop the deadly consequences of opioid addiction and provide treatment for those who are suffering before it's too late. But it's just malpractice for senators to just sit idly by and watch a bill that throws millions of off Medicaid with an expectation that a few extra dollars will make up the difference. We're not going to do it because we are not going to let Americans suffer this way. And by the way, last point, since I'm on the Finance Committee, the cuts in opioid treatment aren't even going to other parts of the healthcare system. They are going to fund tax breaks for the fortunate few in America. That isn't brave. That's not fiscally smart. It's just plain cruel. So my colleagues, we're all going to have some short remarks. We'll just go in terms of seniority. Senator Blumenthal, we're glad that you're here. And as you know, we have votes in a little bit, so we're all going to get